Hi, my name's John Myers. I work for Yahoo here in the UK, and I've just had the pleasure of moderating these two lovely gentlemen on the Beyond Search, different ad formats, PPC and social media panel. So there was a lot to take in. It was a great session. There was a lot of questions at the end, and I would think we probably could have carried on for another half an hour. But I think it was a very successful session. I don't know what you think, guys.
Yeah, I thought it was really good actually. I think it's just such an interesting area. I mean, I know it's called search engine strategies, but there is a whole world out there beyond Google, and I think the audience are obviously interested in just the power of the data that we have and what we can do with that. And Tom had some great stuff about then what you can do with that in terms of the tools and ad formats, and the idea of the sort of the 10 blue links and the little ads. There's just so much more power out there now for marketers.
I absolutely agree, and I think probably the general consensus of the room was, wow, I didn't realise there was all these opportunities and all these different things that we can do. And you, Tom, you covered a load of formats and things on Google that some people were using, but a lot of people asked a lot of questions, and a lot of the questions came towards you to talk about those formats. So do you want to tell us probably the top tips on some of those areas?
Sure, yeah. Well, I think it kind of underlines the point that there's been so much change. It's really quite a challenge to stay up to date, stay current, and the change is within Google, but in addition, it's of course, what's, to be honest, more interesting from my point of view, and I think probably Kieran will agree, is the shift that's happening in terms of data beyond Google, because in that respect, I think Google are kind of trying to emulate what's going on in the display market rather than necessarily leading it. But in terms of the ad formats, we've seen the emergence of site links and the ad extensions, both in terms of product and places. They're kind of three primary ones. And we also kind of talked a little bit around reinforcing the credibility, because that's very important for all online retailers, or any person online.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I think, the panel was called Beyond Search. And I think we got a lot out of the demand-side platforms, the performance display. There was a lot of talk about how search and paid search in particular is very, very about how we're going to run display going forward in some respects. I mean, you probably picked a lot up on that, Kieran.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think, certainly we are looking at display more and more in two respects. You have your sort of brand engagement, and that sits with your planners and your sort of traditional areas. I think as we move towards demand-side platforms and real-time bidding, it does become a similar function to search. And interestingly, so does advertising on Facebook. I mean, I think the level of targeting and tools such as Alchemy that allow you to do, thousands upon thousands of ads and A/B testing and all this sort of thing. The display industry has a lot to learn from search, and it's interesting that Google, one of Google's most recent purchases, and of course Yahoo with Right Media, was a demand-side platform, and they absolutely have seen that is the way that things are going to go moving forward. So people need to be aware of it, and there's a scale issue if you're in a smaller country. So for example, I'm based in Ireland. There isn't necessarily the amount of data we need right now to launch this, but certainly in the UK, US, Germany, all these sort of places, demand-side platforms are there and they're live and they're doing very well.
Oh, great.
There was an interesting question, I think, around the role of kind of media agencies, and it was kind of alluding to kind of an old business model, which I don't for a second think most media agencies are still employing today in that same kind of like vein. What is interesting is how, as Kieran says, search is informing display perspectives. But part of the point I wanted to make was there's still a lot to be learned from a search point of view, bringing in more traditional approaches, incorporating creative, and really how it's wrapped up. Because for your search marketer who's only ever worked in PPC, then there's kind of often a narrow conception of creative and delivering the message via the ad text medium, which is relevant in many cases, but it's not the most creative.
No, great. I mean, thanks, guys. I mean, we had a great panel. We had a lot of fun, a lot of good questions, and I think it's really interesting for me to see that effectively now we're talking not just about search, we're talking about the massively changing face of it, the performance aspect of display, all of these new great formats that are coming in, and ultimately, you heard it here first at SES London 2011. So, that's us. We're done, and thanks very much for listening. Cheers, guys.